just in the last day or so, we've got this new thing from the White House. Our vaccines works against the Omicron, especially for people who get booster shots when they are eligible. If you're vaccinated, you could test positive, but if you get the COVID, your case will likely be asymptomatic or mild. We're intent on not letting Omicron disrupt work and school for the vaccinated. That's a little alarming right there.
For the vaccinated.
Yeah. You've done the right thing, and we will get through this. For the unvaccinated, you're looking at a winter of severe illness and death for yourselves, your families, and the hospitals you may soon overwhelm. And, I mean, anyway, so
is that a prediction or a threat? I mean, for the unvaccinated, you're looking at a winter of severe illness and death for yourselves, your families. What? I mean, who talks like that? This is coming from our administration in the White House. That's pretty crazy.
It's alarming, for sure. But you're now going to be, you get elected. You're now Governor Bundy of the state of Idaho. You're going to now have to interact with this White House.
Well, so one thing that, I'll have to interact, I guess, in some way, obviously. But our founders made it very clear that the states are to check and balance the federal government. And a governor is supposed to do that. He is supposed to make sure that the people of the state are not being, and their rights are not being trampled on by the federal government. And that's something we haven't had for a long, long time, and why the federal government thinks they can do whatever they want to do. In fact, if you go back to September, this is when President Biden announced that employers of 100 and more employees have to force vaccinations on them. And he says things to me that are very concerning, just like he did in this message. He says the vast majority of Americans are doing the right thing, he says. That 25% can cause a lot of damage, and they are. That's what he's saying. Then he goes on, my message to the unvaccinated Americans is this. What more is there to wait for? We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us. What he's doing very clearly is isolating a certain group of the people in this country. And that is a very dangerous thing. Political warfare is literally isolate, demonize, and then destroy. That's been the political warfare that's been taking place for thousands of years. And that's what they're playing here. They're looking to isolate.
Yep.
Then they'll demonize, or, they do that simultaneously. And what for? Well, let's look at examples. And, people don't like to compare. They don't like to go back to Nazi Germany because everybody seems to do it. But there's a great lesson there. And maybe if we don't want to use that when we're talking about isolating the Jews, well, let's talk about Stalin. He isolated the Ukrainians in the very same way. He created the small group of people, minority of people, and then he said how terrible they were to the rest of the people in the country. They demonized them. And then what did they do? Then they began to destroy them, restrict them, take their rights away. I mean, it became very devastating for that group of people. And if we're not careful, I believe that that's what they're doing. And it will take a governor, a state, to say, look, you are not going to do that here. You are not going to isolate the people. You're not going to demonize them. And you're not going to try to destroy them and their rights. And if we could do that on a state level, I think it can be done peacefully. Otherwise, people have to hunker down in their homes and in their little communities and just try to fight this massive federal government. It needs to happen at the state level, and the governor needs to be the one to push it and do it. That's his duty.
And we see a good example of that in Florida, right? I guess just recently, and I haven't really paid attention to national news, but I heard something about, and I know that the Fed has been doing this for a long time. They're just dumping refugees of different types in different states and say, you got to deal with it. And my understanding, I heard that he's actually flying them to New Hampshire, I think is where he's sending them. But his standing on, I have a duty to the citizens of Florida, and we have needs that we have to pay for. People need these things, and we have budgets for that. We didn't account for these 100,000 people you just dumped on us. So we're seeing that. Are there any things that you're seeing that you're like, hey, this is working, or hey, this is a good idea, but it needs this type of twist?
Well, so if we go back to federal funding, taking federal money, we look at like what Brad Little has done in Idaho. He's taken billions and billions of dollars of federal funding, and he's done that with strings attached. And strings like, well, we'll take immigrants in no matter what circumstance, as long as, if the federal government says it, we'll just do it. Or we will mandate, vaccinations. Or we will mandate, masks in our school. These are all things that Governor Little agreed to in order to get federal money, billions of dollars of federal money. And that process has to stop. And it's not just happening on a state level. It's happening on a county level, your health districts, your school boards, even your hospitals, your many corporations are all taking this federal money and signing these memorandums of understandings that basically obligate them to force whatever the White House says.
Right.
And that is an extreme problem that we have in Idaho. It's all over the country, but in Idaho. And our founders termed it as putting the states and the people in undue obedience. And it's done through federal funding. So as governor, I will, fight that process of federal funding coming down into our schools, into our corporations, into our governments, stopping that process so that people can be free to keep their own money and also to make their own decisions according to how they want to make them.